The story begins in the year 1480, where Prince Vlad of Romania lives a happy and peaceful life with his beloved wife Elizabeth. Vlad loves her deeply, and he surprises her with beautiful gifts every day. On that day, he brings her a golden music box, and both of them enjoy a peaceful moment together. But their happiness does not last long, because soon, Vlad receives terrible news. War has broken out in the kingdom, and the enemy has already reached the castle walls. Knowing the danger is serious, Vlad prepares to fight. But before going to war, he orders his men to take Elizabeth to a secure castle. He also asks the Pope to declare that God himself is responsible for protecting his wife. After this, Vlad leaves for battle, while Elizabeth rides through the forest with a few soldiers, heading toward the safe castle. But the enemy already knows her secret route. They hide in the trees and suddenly attack as soon as Elizabeth arrives. She manages to escape the first attack, but two of her soldiers fall from their horses. Realizing that danger is following her, Elizabeth rides faster and tries to escape. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Vlad comes up with a brilliant plan to stop the enemy. His soldiers bring many oil barrels near the castle walls, set them on fire, and push them toward the enemy army. As the burning barrels roll forward, the enemies panic and retreat within minutes. After that, a brutal battle begins. Vlad and his soldiers charge forward, cutting down the remaining enemies. Swords clash, heads are severed, bodies fall, and the battlefield slowly turns into a river of blood. In the end, Vlad and his army win the war because of his clever strategy. Soon after, his soldiers arrive at the enemy castle, carrying the heads of their enemies on spears. But before Vlad can celebrate his victory, he receives shocking news. Elizabeth has been attacked. Hearing this, he abandons everything and rushes to save her. At the same time, Elizabeth has changed her route to escape the enemies. She rides into a snowy region without knowing the danger ahead. This place is known as the Forest of Wolves because many wolves live there. To capture and kill them, several traps have been hidden beneath the snow. Elizabeth's soldiers' horses fall into these traps one by one, but Elizabeth somehow avoids them and continues riding. But finally, her horse also gets caught in a trap. Elizabeth falls to the ground along with the horse, and soon the enemies surround her. Just then, Vlad arrives to save her. He is almost close enough to reach her, but his own horse also gets trapped. Without wasting a second, Vlad jumps from his horse and runs toward Elizabeth. One enemy raises his weapon to attack her, and Vlad quickly throws his sword from a distance. The sword pierces through the enemy's body, but tragically, it continues forward and strikes Elizabeth too. Vlad screams in horror and runs to her. He lifts her into his arms, but it is already too late. Elizabeth is dead. Her blood stains Vlad's hands red, while his tears fall helplessly onto the snow. After this tragedy, Vlad goes straight to the Pope, completely broken by anger and grief. He tells him that God failed to protect his wife, even though he had fought wars and killed countless people in God's name. Then he grabs the Pope by the throat and demands a miracle, asking him to pray to his God and bring Elizabeth back. But no one can do anything. When the Pope remains silent, Vlad loses control. In a burst of rage, he picks up the crucifix lying nearby and stabs the Pope with it, killing him. After that, Vlad begins laughing in such a terrifying way that everyone around him becomes frightened. He shouts that he no longer believes in God. At that moment, a strong wind blows through the church, and tears of blood begin flowing from the statue of Jesus. Vlad laughs again like a madman, and his close associates, terrified by what he has become, drag him out of the church. This is when it becomes clear that Vlad is no longer a normal human being. He believes that every good soul gets a chance to return to this world, even if it happens centuries later. So, with nothing left but pain and obsession, Vlad decides to wait until the day his beloved Elizabeth returns. The scene then cuts to France, 400 years later. Inside a church, a psychic doctor comes to meet a priest and speak to him about a mysterious patient. The doctors are unable to understand what is happening to her, and her recovery is extremely important because she is the niece of the Queen of England. Because of this, the Queen is deeply worried about her condition. The priest then comes to the mental hospital to meet the patient. After reaching there, they enter a tunnel through a secret door. Inside, the priest is introduced to the patient, Maria. The doctors explain her history, saying that Maria once did something inside a church that she should never have done. After that incident, she fell into hysteria, and her mind slowly went out of control. But the strangest thing is found in her records. According to the documents, Maria was born in 1795. This is impossible, because if that were true, she should be 130 years old. But Maria looks like a woman in her 30s. Hearing this, the doctor tells the priest that this is exactly why he came to him. He believes Maria is not just mentally ill, but a demonic creature. While they are talking, Maria, who has been sleeping, suddenly wakes up. The priest moves closer and tries to speak to her, but Maria lets out a terrifying roar, and at that moment, the priest sees her sharp, oversized teeth. Immediately, he understands the truth. Maria is actually a vampire. Instead of being frightened, the priest becomes extremely excited. He declares that Maria is the first vampire ever captured alive. The doctors refuse to believe him, so the priest opens the window. As sunlight touches Maria's body, her skin begins to burn. This proves everything, because vampires can never survive under sunlight. Their skin burns, and this becomes the clearest sign of what Maria truly is. After that, the priest brings a crucifix in front of Maria, but in anger, Maria burns it. Then the priest forcefully grabs the doctor's assistant, cuts his palm, and makes a few drops of his blood fall into Maria's mouth, hoping it will bring her under control. While giving her the blood, the priest notices bite marks on Maria's neck. This makes him realize that Maria was once a normal human, but someone had bitten her and turned her into a vampire. The priest then tells the doctor that the church is still searching for the vampire who is turning people into creatures like this. Hearing this, Maria herself reveals that her master is a prince who is searching for his lost princess. She also says that one day, while searching for her, he will surely come here. The scene then cuts to a man named Jonathan, who has arrived in another city. For some unknown reason, people are terrified to enter this place. Even his carriage driver refuses to take him any further. He says that wolves rule this land, and he will not go ahead. Before leaving, the driver gives Jonathan a protective charm, throws down his luggage, and strangely, also gives him a crucifix. This is strange because a crucifix is not something anyone would normally use to protect themselves from wolves. Jonathan finally reaches his destination, where he must enter a huge castle. But as he goes near it, the back door of the castle suddenly closes on its own. Once inside, he meets Count Dracula, who introduces himself as Prince Vlad. This reveals that Dracula is the same Prince Vlad we saw 400 years ago. In the next scene, Dracula and Jonathan sit together at the dinner table. Jonathan has come there with an important deal for Prince Vlad, but he has no idea that Prince Vlad is actually Dracula. While Jonathan takes some papers out of his bag, the crucifix given by the carriage driver falls out. Seeing it, Dracula asks him if he believes in God. Jonathan replies that he does not, and that someone only gave it to him as a gift. After this, Jonathan gets busy with his work. Dracula uses this moment, secretly picks up the crucifix, and throws it into the fire. Later, he shows Jonathan his room and clearly warns him not to leave it at night. After that, Dracula begins listening to music, while Jonathan starts reading a book in his room. The book contains the history of the castle. On one page, Jonathan sees an old picture of Prince Vlad from his youth. But the strange thing is, the picture of the princess is missing from that page, as if someone had torn it out. The scene then cuts back to the priest, who has now gone to Maria's house. He tells Maria's fiancé that Maria is much better than before, but the evil has not completely left her yet. So he says they must keep her with them for a few more days. While keeping Maria's fiancé busy in conversation, the priest secretly enters Maria's room. Inside the room, he searches for anything connected to vampires. There, he finds the same picture of Elizabeth that had been torn from the book Jonathan was reading in Dracula's castle. This confirms that the missing picture and Maria's condition are connected to Dracula's past. Meanwhile, Jonathan is unable to sleep inside the castle, so he decides to wander around. While walking through the castle, he notices light coming from behind a door. When the door opens, he sees stairs leading down to a beautiful basement. Jonathan slowly goes down. In the middle of the basement, he sees a coffin. Curious and frightened, he opens it. And inside the coffin, he finds Dracula sleeping. Before Jonathan can close the coffin, Dracula suddenly grabs his hand and warns him that he should never have left his room. Almost immediately, several strange creatures appear from the darkness and knock Jonathan unconscious. These creatures are gargoyles, terrifying vampire servants who carry out Dracula's orders. When Jonathan regains consciousness, he finds himself hanging upside down from chains. Beneath him, Dracula orders a large bowl to be placed on the floor. Then, without hesitation, he cuts Jonathan's neck, allowing the blood to drip into the bowl. Terrified, Jonathan looks at Dracula and asks how God could ever create such dangerous creatures. In response, Dracula lets out a chilling laugh. Dracula then tells Jonathan that he is about to die and asks if he has any final wish. Jonathan does not ask for mercy. Instead, he asks a question no one has ever asked Dracula before. As his last wish, he wants to know how Prince Vlad became Dracula. For the first time in a very long time, Dracula is intrigued. He orders the gargoyles to bring Jonathan down and decides to tell him everything. He begins recounting his tragic past, from the war he fought to the heartbreaking death of Elizabeth, the woman he loved more than anything. Much of this is what we have already witnessed earlier in the story. Dracula explains that he always believed good souls are reborn one day. Because of that belief, he spent centuries waiting for Elizabeth to return. But the years passed, and she never came back. As time went on, Dracula became trapped inside his castle, consumed by loneliness. Eventually, he grew jealous of ordinary humans. At least they could find peace through death, while vampires like him were cursed to live for thousands of years. One day, unable to bear the loneliness any longer, Dracula flew into a rage and broke open Elizabeth's grave. But all that remained inside were her bones. Instead of helping him move on, this only made his obsession even stronger. Determined to find her, Dracula came up with a new plan. He began creating a special perfume. Using the rarest and most beautiful flowers from around the world, he developed a fragrance with an almost magical effect. According to Dracula, the first time he used it was in Italy, and immediately, women began flocking toward him. The perfume allowed him to influence people and bend them to his will. At grand parties, everyone seemed to dance according to his commands. Then one day, while attending a party in France, Dracula believed his centuries-long search had finally come to an end. After applying the perfume once again, he spotted a woman who looked exactly like Elizabeth. Filled with excitement, he approached her and reached out to touch her. But the moment he did, he realized she was not Elizabeth at all. After coming so close to his goal, the disappointment shattered him. Feeling hopeless, Dracula lost the courage to continue searching alone. So he created another plan. If he could not find Elizabeth himself, he would use others to find her. That night, he began biting women at the party, turning them into vampires who would serve him. Maria was one of the women present that night, and that was the day she became a vampire. Now, with countless female vampires searching on his behalf, Dracula's hope was renewed. By this point, he had grown old and rarely left his castle. Instead, he relied on his gargoyles to carry out his work. They brought him enormous wealth, and he used that wealth to continue his endless search for Elizabeth. After hearing the entire story, Jonathan tells Dracula that he understands what true love feels like. He says that he also loves his fiancée deeply. As he speaks, he takes out a locket containing a picture of her and shows it to Dracula. The moment Dracula sees the photograph, everything changes. He is completely stunned. The woman in the picture is none other than Elizabeth, reborn as Jonathan's fiancée. After centuries of searching, he has finally found her. Jonathan cannot understand Dracula's reaction, but Dracula, overwhelmed by joy, decides to spare Jonathan's life. After all, it was Jonathan who unknowingly reunited him with the love he had been searching for across 400 years. Now that his search is finally over, Dracula becomes determined to restore his youthful appearance. To do that, he needs a massive amount of blood. He immediately sends all of his gargoyles out to gather what he needs. Meanwhile, the story shifts back to Paris. The priest shows everyone a picture of Elizabeth, and explains that they must find a woman who looks exactly like her. According to him, Dracula is searching for this woman, and if they find her first, they may finally be able to track Dracula down. The priest then reveals the truth about Dracula. He explains that Dracula was not born a monster. He was once an ordinary human being, but after committing a terrible sin against God, he was cursed and transformed into the creature he is today. According to the church's ancient scriptures, if Dracula is killed, every vampire he created will become human again. However, there is another possibility. If Dracula genuinely repents and sincerely asks God for forgiveness, the curse will be lifted not only from him, but also from every vampire he has ever created. At that moment, the doctor's assistant notices something unusual. Looking at the picture of Elizabeth, he suddenly realizes that a woman who looks exactly like her has just arrived in the waiting area to visit Maria. He quickly points it out and explains that Maria and this woman were once close friends. Then he reveals something even more shocking. That woman is Jonathan's fiancée. In the next scene, Dracula disguises himself as a monk and secretly enters a church. Once inside, he uses his magical perfume. The effect is immediate. Every nun in the church becomes strangely attracted to him and loses control of her senses. Taking advantage of the chaos, Dracula begins drinking their blood. His goal is simple. The more blood he consumes, the younger and stronger he becomes. Meanwhile, back at Dracula's castle, Jonathan finally manages to break free from his chains. Desperate to escape, he ties together a blanket and attempts to climb down from the castle. For a moment, it seems like his plan might work. But suddenly, a gargoyle appears and slices through the blanket. Jonathan plummets downward. Fortunately, he survives the fall. The place where he lands is normally an ocean, but the freezing winter has turned it into a massive sheet of ice. Without wasting a second, Jonathan starts running across it. The gargoyles chase after him, but the ice begins cracking beneath their feet. Several of them fall through and drown in the freezing water below. The remaining gargoyles become too frightened to continue the pursuit, allowing Jonathan to finally escape. The story then shifts to the mental hospital where Maria had been kept. Dracula has arrived there at last, but this time, he looks completely different. After feeding on so much blood, he has regained his youth. He now looks exactly like the young Prince Vlad from centuries ago. Using his magical perfume once again, Dracula takes control of everyone inside the hospital and walks directly into Maria's room. He is pleased with her because Maria has successfully befriended Mina, the woman who carries Elizabeth's soul. As a reward, Dracula kills the doctor's assistant and feeds his blood to him, transforming him into a vampire. Then, he takes Maria away and disappears. The following morning, the priest and the doctor discover that Maria has vanished. Even worse, the doctor's assistant has become a vampire. Seeing this, the priest immediately realizes what happened. Dracula came here searching for Elizabeth, and now he knows for certain that Mina is Elizabeth's reincarnation. If that is true, Mina's life is in terrible danger. The scene then cuts to Mina. Maria suddenly comes to visit her, and Mina is shocked by how healthy she looks. Maria hugs her warmly and tells her that she is completely cured. She claims the doctors have discharged her from the hospital and suggests they celebrate together. However, this was all part of Dracula's plan. Maria intentionally brings Mina to the same hotel where Dracula is staying. The moment Dracula sees Mina, it feels as if time itself stops. Tears begin streaming down his face. After searching for centuries, he is finally standing before Elizabeth once again. Unable to control his emotions, Dracula approaches her. When he gently kisses her hand, strange flashes from the past suddenly flood Mina's mind. Confused and frightened, she quickly pulls her hand away and runs. As the day continues, Mina enjoys herself around the hotel, unaware that Dracula is quietly following her everywhere. She enters a haunted house attraction and becomes frightened, only for Dracula to suddenly appear behind her. Later, she visits a shooting booth, where Dracula patiently teaches her how to use a gun. Throughout all of this, Mina continues experiencing strange visions from another life. Memories she cannot explain keep appearing in her mind. Every time they surface, she tries to push them away because they seem impossible to believe. Dracula repeatedly calls her Elizabeth and desperately tries to make her remember who she once was. But Mina cannot accept any of it and eventually leaves. Dracula follows her to her hotel room and gives her a very special gift. It is the same golden music box he gave Elizabeth centuries ago. As Mina listens to the melody, even more memories begin returning to her. Yet instead of comforting her, they make her suspicious. She starts wondering if Dracula is somehow casting a spell on her. Sensing her fear, Dracula finally tells her the truth. He admits that he created a perfume capable of controlling people, but he swears he has never used it on her and never will. To prove his sincerity, he throws the perfume directly into the fire. He explains that he only created it to find Elizabeth. After saying this, he watches helplessly as Mina runs away once again. When Mina arrives home, she discovers that Jonathan has finally returned. However, he is in terrible condition. The priest and the doctor are treating him, and soon the priest reveals the horrifying truth. He tells Mina that Jonathan escaped from Dracula, a monster who controls people using a magical perfume before turning them into vampires with his bite. Mina is left completely confused. Everything Dracula told her now seems to be true. Unable to process everything, she leaves Jonathan and retreats to her room. There, she opens the music box once more. As the melody fills the room, all of her forgotten memories finally return. She remembers her previous life. She remembers being Elizabeth. While she is overwhelmed by these memories, Dracula suddenly appears before her. Startled, Mina backs away in fear. But Dracula calmly tells her that everything she is remembering is true. From that moment onward, the distance between them begins to disappear. As time passes, Mina realizes that Dracula is the man she truly loved centuries ago. Eventually, she embraces him, and the two spend many intimate moments together. Then one night, Dracula bites Mina's neck and transforms her into a vampire. Shocked by what has happened, Mina stares at him in disbelief. Softly, Dracula explains that he never wanted to make her his victim. He says that he only wanted to make her like him, so they could stay together forever and never be separated again. At the same time, outside the house, the priest catches the scent of the same magical perfume Dracula always uses. Instantly, he knows Dracula is nearby. He rushes into Mina's room, only to discover that she is gone. Looking around the empty room, the priest realizes the terrible truth. Dracula has come for Mina, and now he has taken her away. The scene then cuts to Maria, who is alone with her fiancé. At first, everything seems normal. She talks to him lovingly, keeping him distracted, but in reality, she is preparing to turn him into a vampire. Slowly moving closer, she attempts to bite him. Fortunately, the priest arrives just in time and saves Maria's fiancé before it is too late. Seeing her plan fail, Maria completely loses control. Consumed by rage, she charges toward the priest, determined to kill him. But before she can reach him, Jonathan steps forward and swings his sword. In a single strike, he decapitates her. Shockingly, even after her head is separated from her body, Maria's body continues moving violently. The priest immediately realizes that an ordinary death is not enough to stop a vampire. He takes out his crucifix and drives it straight through her heart. Only then does Maria finally die. The story then shifts back to Romania. Dracula's castle is now full of activity. Inside, 2 coffins are brought into the castle, carrying Dracula and Mina. The gargoyles welcome Mina warmly, treating her like royalty. They have even prepared Elizabeth's old clothes for her. Mina wears them, making her look almost identical to the woman Dracula lost centuries ago. For a brief moment, it seems as though Dracula has finally achieved his dream. But their happiness is short-lived. The priest and his followers arrive at the castle with a massive army. Their mission is clear. They must end Dracula's curse and save every vampire he has created. Soon, a full-scale assault begins. Soldiers surround the castle. Cannons fire. Bullets fly through the air. The gargoyles rush into battle, fighting to defend their master. a brutal war erupts outside the castle walls. Mina becomes terrified as the sounds of battle echo throughout the castle. Seeing her fear, Dracula calmly reassures her. He tells her that nothing will happen and asks her to stay inside. Then, sword in hand, he walks out to face the invading army alone. The moment Dracula enters the battlefield, the tide of the battle changes. Moving with incredible speed, he cuts down soldier after soldier. Anyone who stands in his path is killed within seconds. His power is so overwhelming that the soldiers seem completely helpless against him. At one point, Maria's fiancé fires bullets directly at Dracula, but the bullets have no effect whatsoever. Instead, Dracula swings his sword and instantly separates the young man's head from his body, killing him on the spot.
Watching this, the priest finally approaches Dracula himself. He begs him to stop killing people. Dracula responds by saying that he no longer wants to kill anyone and has no intention of creating more vampires. Everything he did, every terrible thing he committed, was only for one reason. He wanted to find Elizabeth again. But the priest reminds him of the consequences of his actions. He tells Dracula that countless people were turned into vampires because of his obsession. Even if his intentions were rooted in love, the damage he caused could not be ignored. If these vampires remain alive, they could bring unimaginable destruction to the world. As they continue arguing, Mina's screams suddenly echo through the castle. Dracula immediately abandons the conversation and rushes to her side. He embraces her tightly, worried for her safety. The two speak about their love for each other. Mina, afraid of losing him, begs him never to leave her. Dracula promises that he never will. However, the priest follows them once again. This time, he speaks not as an enemy, but as someone offering a final chance at redemption. He tells Dracula that there is still a way to make everything right. If he chooses the right path now, he can finally achieve what he has wanted for centuries. He can reunite with Elizabeth in the next world, and at the same time, save the people suffering under his curse. For the first time in centuries, Dracula listens. He lowers his guard and sincerely asks God for forgiveness. At that very moment, the priest takes his crucifix and drives it into Dracula's heart. Watching from inside the room, Mina is devastated. She rushes to Dracula's side and drags his dying body inside. After searching for him across lifetimes and finally finding him again, she cannot bear the thought of losing him. As Dracula lies dying, he confesses his love to Mina one final time. While speaking his last words, his body begins aging rapidly. Within moments, centuries catch up to him. His flesh turns to ash and slowly drifts away into the air. Mina completely breaks down. Overwhelmed by grief, she cries uncontrollably. Nearby, Jonathan watches helplessly. His heart aches as he sees the woman he loves mourning another man. Outside the castle, darkness settles across the land. Dracula's ashes float gently through the night air. At the same time, the curse is finally broken. Every gargoyle transforms back into a human child, and every vampire in the world becomes human once again. Peace finally returns after centuries of suffering. With Dracula gone, Elizabeth freed, and the curse lifted from everyone he created, the story comes to an emotional end.